Manis, good evening and welcome to Radio Lansar.
Hi, Suraj. Thanks for having me, and hello to your listeners.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, and how about yourself?
Very well, thanks. All good on our side. But looking at this, with some form of interest, we've always heard that, there's always been a conversational point, at family gatherings, at meetings. We're always told, you know what, you guys need to be moving along because there's no future here. The trends are not looking too good. So can you elaborate on this trend where South African parents are looking to save for their children, for their education, and perhaps, relocate them in foreign countries?
Of course, and I think you're exactly right there. I think there's a natural perception of better career prospects internationally and more sort of prestige international degrees. And that's not a knock by any means on South African universities. I think it stems more from domestic concerns. So I think the trend, sort of what I've noticed, is that clients sometimes feel like they've got sort of the right intention to save towards education, but they are concerned about the outcome of the country.
Absolutely. So what specific concerns are driving this trend? We know you mentioned it's the outcome of what's going to happen, but what are some of the other concerns as well?
Look, I think, again, it stems from instability in our country, not only on a schooling level, but more from an economical, political, and obviously then an occupational stability level. So, I mean, if you look at unemployment figures in South Africa, we had 32% unemployment versus the US that's sitting at 4%. Now, even if you do go to university and you do graduate, there's 10% of those graduates that are also unemployed. So, I mean, and then for the 90% that do get a job, I mean, with factoring in all those aspects, job security, obviously, that's another issue then. So even if you are lucky enough and privileged enough to have a job after you were privileged enough to go and study for it, it's still an unstable environment.
Absolutely. So what are some funding solutions that you would recommend for parents considering offshore universities for their children, that as an option? What's some of the solutions that you can provide?
Look, so I mean, it's obviously a very broad-based question. Each client is unique, but obviously, it comes to mind when we talk about offshore education. Then naturally, offshore investments do come to mind. Typically, there's two different ways of doing that. I mean, you can take your SA rand and physically invest that into a offshore fund that has some exposure to foreign currency. And then the second method is to externalize your rands, meaning taking your rands into a foreign currency. You're physically purchasing the foreign currency and then investing that foreign currency. And the main reason behind that is if you don't have that offshore exposure, you don't want to wake up when your child is 18 and the rand dollar, and by no means is this a prediction, but then the rand dollar is 50 rand to the dollar. Yes. Then obviously that's off the table, bringing back to the trend that I've noticed that is exactly one of the concerns about the intention is there. We are saving money, but are you saving it in the right place for the right outcome? That's more or less where I'm at with that.
Right. So how can parents ensure that their children are well prepared, for the cultural and academic challenges that come with studying abroad? Of course, they will come with a myriad of challenges. The countries are not very similar to us, sometimes completely different. So how can parents ensure that their kids are well prepared for that?
Well, I think if you go and look at the most spoken language around the world, it's Mandarin. And there are obviously other languages such as Spanish that will also be very popular around the world. So obviously, I think it will be a great advantage if parents can sort of advocate for their kids to start learning an alternative language as early as possible. Naturally, if they do then go overseas, it will be much easier to quote unquote fit in there. And I mean, from a parent's perspective, I sort of think support your child where you can, communicate regularly. But I also think that in the future, the whole virtual education world might open up to a point where the traveling side of things won't be as necessary. So yeah, that's what I think would help a lot.
When it comes to education itself, what trends do you see in the future with regards to the demand for offshore education?
So again, hopefully for those children leaving their nests, it's not going to be as scary. Like I mentioned, with virtual education improving, we are living in a virtual world. I think it begs the question what type of degrees you'll do through that. But I think things are evolving. And then, yeah, I think secondly, something that I've noticed as well, which comes in high demand, is certain occupations, such as, for example, teachers. I mean, it's no secret that we grossly underpay our teachers in South Africa. But if they go abroad, they are a much respected profession, and they get top dollar for their services, which is just fair. So I think that's one of the trends that we'll see panning out as we go along.
Very interesting, and of course, this is a regular occurrence. It's always a conversational topic, and yeah, we see people following suit with that as well. Manus,